And so has anthropology, like most disciplines in like higher education, just kind of been taken over by leftists for the most part?
It's different in because it's more. It's like
It's worse in anthropology?
it's one of the absolute worst. Yeah. And that
And,
ties into NAGPRA, which is the Native American Graves Repatriation Act, which there's a bunch of stuff on that.
we actually had a viewer of the show, Goob, the Goob, shout out. He's watching right
Yeah, I
now.
know him.
Oh, you
Actually,
know
I've
him.
seen
Oh,
him.
okay.
I
Interesting.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was, we used to do this. I used to do this after show, and he was telling me all about that, how they just passed all these laws
Mhm.
around this where they're basically having to like remove everything from museums and whatnot.
Yes. So I'll give you the spark notes. And yeah, NAGPRA, the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act, was a good law in the 1990s because you go back like 100 years, there are all these people grave robbing Native Americans, taking their skeletons. Famously, there's a story which may or may not be true about George W. Bush's grandfather stealing the skull of Geronimo, who was a famous 19th century war hero, or warrior.
Sure.
And so this law was put into place to repatriate the remains of all of these Native Americans. But what happened in at the end of 2013 into 2024 is they expanded NAGPRA with an administrative change, which changed its application from remains and direct grave goods found in the context of human remains of Native Americans, and they changed it to be all cultural materials of Native Americans. So anything from a Native American, a blanket, shell necklace, jewelry, weapons, anything from a Native American, whether it's pre 1500 or not, any of it is all Native Americans. The direct tribal representative gets to decide what is done with that. It has to be displayed in the way that they want to. It has to be approved to be displayed in the way that they request it to be displayed. They have no time frame for deciding that. And what this has effectively meant is that all of these natural history museums have to shut down any display of any Native American artifacts.
Let's take a call here. We got the Goob actually coming up, so let's get him on here. And phone lines are open, 1-888-949-2969. Goob! What's up, man?
What's up, Danny? And good
hold
finally
on a second.
speak to you, Sam.
Yeah, what's up, man? How you doing?
There we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Goob.
So I wanted to add a little bit to the NAGPRA conversation from earlier. So the Kennewick man actually wasn't returned under NAGPRA. Obama did it under an executive order, and then they buried him under 10 tons of gravel. And the reason it wasn't done under NAGPRA is because it actually wasn't related to Native Americans. It had about as many markers for Native Americans as it did for Europeans, but it did have a close match to South Native Americans. NAGPRA, being the North American Grave Repatriation Act, does not apply to South Americans. And then he was talking about how archaeology is one of the most woke and far left branches of science that there is, and that's absolutely true. And they're emboldened by the Department of Interior Secretary, which is a Native American activist, woke woman herself, who reinterpreted NAGPRA this year, as he described, broadening it so it applies to now literally everything. And the archaeologists, who are all leftists themselves, they view archaeology as an evil, racist, colonizing act. And so in order to progress, for them, the idea of progress is the elimination of this evil, racist, colonizing act. And so they are quite literally systematically destroying all of North American archaeology.
So they want there just to be no archaeologists?
That is, the goal is the destruction of archaeology and turning it into, those articles that you were talking about earlier. But
Right.
Thousands and thousands of images have been deleted online as of this year from the update. It's not actually written into the law, but like I said, these archaeologists are enabled by this. They're emboldened by it. And so they've written policies themselves to even further restrict things, even beyond the extreme restrictions that NAGPRA now imposes. So the loss of information has been staggering this year alone. and it's only increasing.
So does that mean like there's just like the findings that, you know, that archaeologists historically, they find these massive, like, you know, cities and civilizations that'll just kind of go by the wayside eventually?
Well, I'm specifically talking about the
Or you're talking about
USA
just
here,
in the
right?
US? Okay.
Yeah,
But-
so this problem is spreading across the world. This is a problem that is not just to the USA. I mean, Canada is just as bad, if not worse.
Oh, Canada's. I mean, Canada
but-
famously, like, they had the mass graves, and I remember when
Which
that
weren't.
yeah, they never existed. I remember when that first happened, and I went on the Boys Cast, and I was like, "This is bullshit." Like, if you actually look at, because it's one of those things, you see a
Yeah, you called
headline,
it.
you see a headline, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is horrible," and then you start looking into it, and like, I'm not doing extensive research. I spent 10 minutes looking into it, and you're like, "Yeah, they've never even found anything." Like, they haven't found a single thing. And then a lot of them, they go unmarked graves, and you're like, well, yeah, because they use wooden grave markers, and over 100 years, like, those things just deteriorate by the environment. So that's why they're unmarked. Right. But even still, they're like, they use this ground penetrating radar, but it was just a huge grift. Like, it was people were like, oh, I can make tons of money. Like, there's no money in finding the graves. There's money in saying you think there might be something there. Right. And so,
right.
But they burned down 120 churches in Canada. Zero repercussions from that. Like, the whole thing was insane. I mean, even still, like, if you bring that up in Canada, there's a lot of people who'll be like, yo, that's fucked up. Like, you can't say that there was nothing there, even though there's nothing there. And now I imagine Trump coming in, I feel like on his list of shit that he wants to get done, this I imagine would be pretty low on that list of doing anything for this.
I don't know. I talked to Dr. Weiss if she's been talking to people in his cabinet, and I don't think any real progress has been made yet. I mean, he's not even president yet, right? But there's some hope there. There's also some court cases. NAGPRA is actually a violation of the First Amendment because it forces the federal government to give deference to Native American religious leaders. So people don't really think about Native American religions the same way, but Mormons also claim American history. So imagine if the federal government wrote into law that scientists had to listen to and defer to Mormons anytime their opinion disagreed with the science.
Right.
That's what's been done for Native Americans. So it's a First Amendment violation. And it's also the DOI writing law, which they do not have the ability to do. That is the not Congress, but the Senate, right? And so there's been a case against Chevron, the oil company. They, I think, were suing like the EPA, and they won their case. So there's some hope that this might be overturned through that as well. But it does look pretty grim.
Anything else there, Goob? Anything you want to add? Any questions?
No, I just wanted to talk about how the federal government has made archaeology literally illegal, and it's all being erased and destroyed.
Crazy. And is there someone who's working to? I guess you might be, but Samuel, but like people who are working to kind
Dr.
of like
Elizabeth Weiss.
Preserve this?
Yeah. Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, she is an incredible archaeologist, anthropologist who is fighting against this. She is pretty much the only one. And yeah, I've been trying to raise awareness for about 6 or 7 months now. And Edward Little on Twitter has a massive private collection of images, and he's been sharing them on Twitter. So if you want to see some of it, you can find some from him, but pretty much all the images of all Native American artifacts have been erased January 12th.
It's crazy that it's even images of the artifacts. It's not even the artifacts themselves, but just the images of them.
And it's quite a bit more than just the images. It even is artistic depictions, written descriptions. I mean, it's literally any and all information.
What about books? Like is this going to trickle down to like books being removed from libraries?
I think it will eventually, and it's unclear to the extent that that's happened already, because books have been removed. Because if they also have images, there's some anecdotes that I've gotten from people that work with NAGPRA. One of them is that they were walking through university. They're doing an audit on a university, right? And so they're going through every single department. I mean, they're going through their physics department and everything, looking for anything Native American. They were going through the staff's offices looking for paintings on the wall, because if they had Native American subject matter, they were taking them down. This is the extent of information erasure and removal that is happening across all major universities and archaeology departments in the U.S.
And it's pretty much just me, the Goob, and Elizabeth Weiss, and she's the only one with any power. I mean, I've talked to this on relatively large podcasts of like a few thousand viewers, but that's it.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
And from what I've seen, when you bring it up, there doesn't quite seem to be the reaction that I would expect when you tell people who are really passionate about history that it's been made illegal by the federal government. It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't.
I mean, on my end, like that thread you talked about the Crusades, that thread got 8 million impressions. I've written 3 or 4 threads about NAGPRA. It's maximum 20,000.
Yeah.
Like people don't really seem to care. And to me, it's just a massive thing. And, you know, the Goob found me eventually and kind of freaked out that someone else was talking about this. And we both had that reaction because it's just a massive thing that nobody is talking about. And for a while, I was like trying to get people to care, but it didn't go anywhere. No, like nothing gets picked up.
Right. And I guess at some point it just becomes too late. Like if they kind of have their way and then you go, well, all this has been done, it's not going to be undone, or it'll be very difficult to be undone.
Yeah. I mean, they've literally burnt x-rays. They are destroying research. So it's not just the objects and it's not even just being pulled from public display. It is also being destroyed physically, some of this at least.
What is the justification for destroying these things versus just removing them from public display? Like that seems so over the top.
Just even more extreme levels of woke. Yeah, it's the natives are spiritual people, and so having this information on them, it damages them spiritually and whatever nonsense you want to make up. They banned Dr. Weiss from accessing her own research archives that she was the manager of for the university on the grounds of her being a menstruating person. They couldn't even use the word woman, but they banned women and physically changed the locks to the storage area so that she could not get in, and this was in retaliation because she spoke out against NAGPRA.
Wow. So this is like, I could see this bubbling up, but yeah, there's so many issues.
She's Dr. Peterson, but for
this topic,
she's the archaeology's Dr. Peterson.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You guys got to figure out a way to get people to care about this, because it does seem fairly serious and fairly hard to undo. That's for sure. Like once again,
this is probably the largest.
But anyway, thank you for
talked about on.
Oh, there you go. All right, Goob.
Thank you for entertaining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for calling in. Good talking to you, man. The Goob, everybody. Interesting.